Welcome and aloha everyone. Glad you could join us. We are going to be covering some really exciting information today. And people all over the world have registered for this event, so I'm very happy to have you join us. We're shooting out here from Hawaii, the Big Island. And I know many of you are in places that are experiencing lockdowns, and of course the world we live in today is very different to what it was a couple of years ago. And we're all directly experiencing the changes. Now, many of us are all asking the same question, well, when is things going to get better? When is the situation going to change for the better? And we know that there are very worrying signs of the times that are ahead of us. And what we're going to be covering today in this webinar is something that I really hope doesn't happen, but I have to say, based on the 20 years of research I've done on this UFO extraterrestrial topic, it does look like this alien false flag event is going to be played out. Now, many of you have probably seen the video documentary by Dr. Stephen Greer, The Cosmic Hoax. And that was something that really spurred me into diving into this literature again. And as I did so, I realized that the cosmic hoax is a very real possibility coming our way. And of course, in that documentary, The Cosmic Hoax by Stephen Greer, he thought it was imminent. And I agree that something like that is imminent. But I very much disagree over how it's going to look, how it's going to be played out. And so I'll be talking about that at length. And you're going to get, I think, a really good idea of the situation we're in right now and what is likely to happen. And so for those of you that are part of this webinar, you're going to be prepared for something. And it truly is going to be something extraordinary that takes us well beyond the extraordinary events that have already happened over the last 18 months or so, ever since the coronavirus appeared on the planet and began its spread. We've had a lot of changes in the 18 months, and I think what we are about to witness is going to take that to another level. So it's going to be a wild ride, and for those of you that are prepared, you're going to be the ones that are going to be able to advise people as to what's happening and to how to deal with the situation. So I'm going to give you, in this 2-hour presentation, followed by 30 minutes of Q&A, a really succinct overview of what I believe you need to know to be prepared for this cosmic hoax or this alien false flag Psyop. So when did it all begin? Where does the literature discussing an alien false flag event begin? Well, I found that the first reference to it was in this document called Report from Iron Mountain on the Possibility and Desirability of Peace. And that was authored by Leonard Levin, and that was ostensibly commissioned on behalf of several government agencies in the US. But the author later on said that it was just his creation, a work of fiction. Plausible deniability was established because this was a report that involved very senior level officials, scientists, discussing what would be required to maintain the military-industrial complex, given all of the movements towards world peace. So this report runs through a number of different scenarios about the future and what can happen, and which of these scenarios would help support or take away from a permanent war economy. So we can see why the military-industrial complex would have been interested in the report. So the key passage in the report that is relevant to what we're looking at today is this, quote, "Development of an acceptable threat from outer space, presumably in conjunction with a space research surrogate for economic control, appears unpromising in terms of credibility. New, less regressive approaches to the creation of fictitious global enemies invite further investigation." So this document is looking at a number of possible false flag events for the future, and it identifies one of them as being an attack from outer space, but says that at that time in the 1960s that would not be a credible threat. And what the report from Iron Mountain makes clear is that this idea of credibility for a false flag event is very important. If it's going to succeed, you need to be able to convince the population that it really is happening. So it does refer in the document to a recognized extraterrestrial menace. So this is the first time that you actually have a document, now whether it's an official government document, a work of fiction as the author claims after the fact, or some kind of commissioned study that was classified but then leaked. Whatever the truth behind the report from Iron Mountain is, one thing is clear, is that it is outlining a possible false flag event involving an attack from outer space, involving a recognized extraterrestrial menace, and that would be necessary to maintain very high levels of military spending, the military-industrial complex at that time. Now in 1967, those technologies did not exist. Now what's very interesting is that 7 years later, Carol Rosin says that she began working as a corporate manager at Fairchild Industries, which is a company that Werner Von Braun went to after he retired from the NASA Apollo program in 1972. And he went to Fairchild Industries because he was working on a secret space station that was based on his design, which is called the Von Braun design, or the Von Braun space station. So this is what Carol Rosin says that Von Braun told her.
He would bring up that last card, and remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens, and all of it, he said, is a lie.
So there's Carol Rosin talking about what she was told in 1974 by Von Braun about a series of false flag events culminating in the alien invasion. Now, obviously, something like that would involve multiple parties, multiple agencies, even nation states, all collaborating to pull off such a series of false flag events in the United States. Now, the question that I find very interesting is that, was Von Braun a double agent? We know he was an Operation Paperclip scientist, and we know, based on my research and the work of many others, that the Germans had established a breakaway colony in Antarctica, and Von Braun was an intermediary. So I think Von Braun was a double agent, and the question is, was Von Braun relaying a plan that not only involved various government agencies in the United States and corporations, but also the Antarctic Germans, and of course their allies as well, in this false flag alien invasion event? And I think as we look deeper and deeper into the complexity of this alien false flag event, it becomes clear that it would have been something that could only be successfully deployed as a global event, because you couldn't have an alien false flag invasion just in the United States. It would have to be some kind of global event. And that would involve a series of governments, institutions, work collaborating with powerful groups such as the Antarctic German breakaway civilization. I talk about the Antarctic German breakaway civilization in my book, Antarctica's Hidden History, and in one of the webinars I updated the information recently with what we know has been occurring in Antarctica since that book came out in 2018. So Antarctica, the German breakaway colony down there called the Dark Fleet, what role would they play in this alien false flag event? I'll get to that as we go on. So Von Braun, 1974, warns Carol Rosin. So what happened next? Well, now we move forward to the early 1990s, and Serge Monast was a Canadian investigative journalist, and he worked with a number of insiders, and he learned about this alien false flag event, and he published a book on it titled Project Bluebeam. It was only published in French and has never been translated, which is very interesting. Now, the thing was that Monast was a very independent-minded journalist. He was someone that didn't believe in the system. He was homeschooling his children and putting out a lot of information about the corruption in the Canadian political scene and in the US. What happened was that in late 1996, his children are taken away from him, and then he is arrested, and one day later he's declared dead from an alleged heart attack. And he was at the time 51, very young for someone to die from a heart attack, who had no history of heart ailments at all, especially given that he, in his writings and his lectures, identified psychotronic technologies that had been developed by the CIA that could induce heart attacks. So wouldn't that be very sad that while he revealed that kind of technology, that it was used against him? So in his book, he identifies 4 steps of Project Bluebeam. The 4 steps to global domination. So the first step Monast identified was that the deep state would contrive the discovery of religious artifacts that would lead to a new understanding of major religions around the world. Step 2, using technologies, advanced technologies, 3-dimensional holograms and laser projections of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, all appear and merge into one entity. So you would have the use of advanced technologies to project images into the atmosphere, into the sky, and people would look up and see this. And this would be a very powerful way to get people all over the world to believe that something extraordinary was underway, something life-changing. Step 3 of Project Bluebeam was the electronic voice of God technologies developed that send telepathic messages into the human brain, imitating a god or an angel speaking to them. And step 4, this is where we get into that final card that Von Braun was talking about in 1974, or that was referred to in the report from Iron Mountain in 1967. This kind of hoaxed alien invasion. So step 4 involved 2 different ways in which a false flag alien event could transpire. One would be an invasion and the other would be a salvation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an either or, it could be both. And so this is what Monast thought was going to happen with Project Bluebeam, that it had three aspects.